So let's switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about liens and judgments.
Sure.
So how do you rectify them? How do they get resolved?
There's a couple ways, and it depends on what type of lien or what type of judgment.
Okay.
So oftentimes what we see are old mortgages that have been previously paid off that are still showing up on title. And one of the reasons is, especially for mortgages in and around 2000, 2008, we'll just say that it was sort of the Wild West. Mm-hmm. People were not doing the right thing. Right. So what would happen is you pay off a mortgage, the mortgage company would be lazy. They legally are obligated to file what's called the satisfaction of that mortgage, but they didn't do it. So oftentimes what you'll need to do is you'll need to go back, you'll have to contact the mortgage company, the previous mortgage company, and have a satisfaction drafted, a duplicate satisfaction, so you could either bring it to closing or they could file it, so that could be taken off the title. Because unfortunately, a lender such as yourself won't make a first mortgage to the next person if there's anything in front of them on title that includes a previous paid off mortgage, because on paper it still exists even though the debt doesn't exist anymore.
I had that exact situation, and it was an old property that got satisfied in like 1988. And there was 13 different banks because they all sold. It was this bank, then got bought out by this bank, they got bought out by this, and by the time we couldn't find it, we couldn't get anybody, and we lost the deal because of it.
I know it sometimes happens, and sometimes you have to be creative on the seller side. There's something called a quiet title action, where essentially you start a lawsuit to clear that from title, and sometimes something like that might have to occur. And even though, hopefully that would, if you were discussing or the possibility of a quiet title action for a very old mortgage, something like that if I'm a seller, even if it costs me $5,000 to pay an attorney to do a quiet title action, it saves your deal, allows you to close. Exactly. So there are things that can be done litigation-wise that could help you clear title if you can't find the previous owner or something like that.
Right.
But unfortunately, those things sort of have to be negotiated and dealt with at the close or right before the closing to make sure that it happens.
Right. Yeah.
And then also some of the other things, money judgments. People don't realize that in New York State, if you have a credit card judgment against you, anything that you have against you automatically becomes a lien on your real property, automatically. So if you have let's say you got to have a credit card judgment, then you buy a house, that judgment now attaches to your house. You go to sell that house, it needs to be dealt with.
So you could buy the house with it, you just can't sell it.
Sometimes they'll let you buy it, but not sell it. The other, something that, that oftentimes you need to do is you need to either negotiate it, you need to pay it off, etc., because it becomes a lien on the property. But one thing that people sometimes don't realize is that the judgments in New York State are good for 20 years. They're only a lien on the real property unless that judgment is renewed for 10. Okay. So a lot of times there's old judgments. Let's say you've owned your house forever. Let's say you had a credit card judgment from 1998, right? We're more than 10 years past that. So because of that, at the 10-year mark, it would no longer be a lien on the property. So even if you still owed it, it wouldn't be a lien on the real property. So it wouldn't affect our real estate transaction. Same thing is true with IRS tax liens. People oftentimes have IRS issues and their IRS tax liens. Those two are good for 20 years, but they're only liens on the real property for 10 years, and you sort of have to renew it. Gotcha. One thing that that sticks to the property for a full 20 years, because we're in New York State tax liens. New York State tax liens are the liens on real property for the entirety of the 20-year lifespan of the judgment.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much, Lee, again, for coming in. As always, we really appreciate your time and knowledge.
Thanks.
All right, and again, I'm Michael Romano with Contour Mortgage.
John Enriquez, Listing Pro Realty.
And Lee Friedman, Friedman Law Associates.
All right, if you guys have any questions about the attorney process, about the realtor process, or about the mortgage, or any financing questions, feel free to reach out to us anytime. Talk to you soon.